Boa noite, pessoal. Que bom ver a sala cheia. Temos 260 online agora. Bom, e hoje damos início à nossa sexta apresentação do 13º Seminário Internacional de Arquitetura e Urbanismo da PUC Minas. A disciplina Seminários 1, 2, 3 e 4 é realizada de forma integrada entre as unidades Coração Eucarístico e Praça da Liberdade, intercalando palestras presenciais e virtuais. Nossa conferencista de hoje é a arquiteta e professora indiana Aparna Dharestwar. Aparna é sócia diretora do Sameep, Padora and Associates, um escritório sediado em Mumbai, na Índia. Completou seus estudos de graduação na Academia de Arquitetura de Mumbai em 1994. Atualmente radicada em Chicago, está explorando novas oportunidades para o estúdio no continente americano. Possui cerca de 30 anos de experiência em projetos arquitetônicos e de interiores, comerciais e residenciais em diversas tipologias e escalas. Foi responsável por implementar altos padrões de produção e monitoramento de projetos para garantir que a qualidade seja atendida em todos os documentos projetuais e contratuais no estúdio como um todo. Esteve intimamente envolvida na execução de projetos premiados como o Temple of Stens, em Jetavan, a Biblioteca Maya Somaixa, na zona rural de Maharashtra, e a Lattice House, em Jammu. A Aparna está associada à Escola de Arquitetura e Urbanismo da Universidade de Wisconsin, Milwaukee, como professora adjunta de projetos, e foi jurada convidada para processos seletivos do programa de mestrado. Em Mumbai, foi professora visitante na Academy of Architecture de Mumbai. Agradeço novamente a participação da arquiteta Aparna, que fez um grande esforço para estar aqui conosco, lá onde ela está, nesse momento, são 4 da manhã, e passo a palavra a ela. Boa apresentação. Hello, Aparna. Can you see me?
Hi, Pedro. Yeah, I can see you. Do you need me to put my video on now?
Yes, that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Am I audible and am I visible to the audience? I'm not sure.
Yes. Yeah, that's perfect. Just
Okay.
a reminder to the people on the room. Pessoal, nós estamos contando hoje com tradução simultânea, uma vez que a palestra da Aparna será em inglês. Então, quem precisar da tradução, basta clicar aí embaixo na tela do Zoom, onde tem mais, e na parte interpretação, e escolher o áudio em português, tá? Quem quiser voltar para o inglês, você faz o mesmo caminho e escolhe o áudio original. Okay, Aparna, feel free to take it as it goes.
So, thank you, everybody. I'm Aparna Dharestwar. I am Associate Principal at SP+A, Mumbai, and I am absolutely delighted to be here with you this evening. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible because I believe not everybody is very versatile in English, and I want to make it very simple when it's being translated. The title of today's presentation is Projective Histories. What we're going to do is, let me try and give you a slice of the kind of work that we do and some of our projects. Pedro, all okay? I hear a beep. Not sure if everything is fine. Are we good to go? Pedro, are we good to go? There was a beep. Okay. So is there an Indian way of thinking? This is the title of an essay by a very famous Indian poet and linguist. And he epitomizes the many worlds and ways of thinking available to the Indian consciousness. In his attempt to explore the Indian way of thinking, he does not wish to come up with a final answer, but he seeks to bring together innumerable contested ideas, concepts, paradigms, and modalities that have been identified as Indian. For those who are not very aware, India is a very big country, but also a very diverse country. We often say that, every 100 kilometers, you have a different language, you have a different cuisine, You have a different set of people living there. So it's a pretty diverse and complex geographical space to be in. And at the studio, we are very aligned to this way of questioning about what is the actual Indian way of thinking. As a practice, we at SP Plus A believe that India's vast breadth of socio-cultural environments require various means of engaging with the country's varying contexts. So this type, program, design, building, processes, they're subservient to each of the project's unique frame of reference. The studio's approach, hence, is to look at context as a repository of the resources that connect the production process and networks, and appropriating techniques beyond the traditional use, while allowing them to evolve and persist, not through just preservation, but through evolution. So to simplify, what I'm saying is, when we are looking at history, do we want to mimic history, or do we want to learn from it and contemporize it and have our own interpretation of history? So that's a constant question that we have while we are working in our studio. Our practice also questions the nostalgia involved with museumification of craft and tradition, and what is regional, what is traditional. So it's a very interrogative sort of design process that we have in our studio. We advocate also collaborations and collective models of practice, which means we are often collaborating with different other architectural practices within Mumbai or within India to work on various projects, say in the city or in India. We advocate this hybrid model as an alternative to just, oh, I'm sorry, I think I went a couple of slides ahead. Just give me a second. Yeah, so we advocate this sort of practice where we are, constantly interacting with other practices as well within the country, and seeing how that can contribute to our work as a whole. We are a team of about 50 architects working out of Mumbai and Chicago. And today we will look at a couple of projects. There are some student housing, which I thought might interest the students who are here today. We're going to do a couple of temples, because I imagine India might evoke that kind of, in iconography of temples within the country. We have a residential building that we did a couple of years ago, and we also have a factory. So if time permits, I will run you through all the projects, or Pedro, feel free to let me know if you want me to stop at any time. So here we start. Okay, so the first project that we are going to be looking at is called Hostels. It's located in a city called Kota in India. The picture that you see, you're going to see next, is a traditional mansion that you might find in this part of the country. It's called Haveli in its local dialect. Typically, these are made out of stones, but the predominant feature within Havelis are the courtyards that they have, the mini courtyards that they have, the use of stone, the carving, and the intricate lattices, the screens that you're able to see here on the image. This is a very prominent feature of a mansion. And we borrowed very, very heavily from this historical prototype or archetype that is available to us. This is a diagrammatic representation of a Haveli, where, as you're able to see, Pedro, are you able to see my cursor?
Yes,
okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, so this is a typical plan, an evolution of a plan, which we imagine might have developed, where you're looking at a rural house and how it went from coming together to forming a courtyard, a central space in the center of the house with all the rooms on the side, and how here you have a single courtyard and all the rooms along the edges. and how it develops into a slightly bigger mansion where you have multiple courtyards. So you have courtyards of varying scale. And this is a quintessential plan of a Haveli from, centuries ago, perhaps. And a lot of these Havelis still exist. To give you an image of how it might look, this is how an Haveli might look from a slightly higher level. These are, of course, addressing the issues of being in a geography where the temperatures are extremely hot. This is desert region. So this is the general context of where the project was located. And we borrowed very, very heavily from this context. This is the city. This is the city as it stands today. This is Kota. Kota in recent times, in recent decades, is known as India's coaching capital. Coaching as in tutoring students. So students who finish their 12th grade typically give a lot of exams. They give a lot of entrance exams, such as you might have given to get into professional degrees, such as, say, engineering and medicine. And in India, medicine and engineering is a very, very top choice for most of the students. It's seen as a path to a more lucrative career. And Kota has become a coaching capital of the country, where there are thousands of coaching classes where children are sent after they graduate from their 10th grade, and they live in these really dense hostels where their life is only about attending classes from morning to evening. So it's become a little notorious of late, because it's not the most encouraging atmosphere for students to study. So the project that we had here was to create a hostel similar to what is available, what you see in these pictures. A lot of these buildings are hostels. The interesting part about the project was that it was not only student housing, it was the owners of the student hostel wanted to stay on the upper floors of this structure. So it was not only going to be, it was a hybrid program where you had slightly public program on the lower floors, and you had private residential levels at the upper. Some about like I said, about 300,000 students flock to Kota every year. And this is a hot, dusty, congested, very dense city. And this is the city where, the bulk of India's next generation of engineers and doctors will probably come from. This is the graphic representation, the miniature that we developed at the end of the project. And the reason why I am showing this right at the beginning is because I wanted to run you through the residential program mix, which contains hostel rooms at the lower floors. It has a central courtyard along which all the rooms are arranged, similar to the Haveli that I showed you. And the upper floors are where you're seeing the owners having their residential program. It was like a penthouse. So you see there's a split of private and a public program in one structure. The other interesting fact of the site is that there is no I don't know what is the equivalent of setback, Pedro. You might have to pick that up later. But the structure is built from edge to edge on the plot, which means the neighboring buildings on both sides will share the wall, which is at the edge. So your project is literally sandwiched between the two buildings that are on the other side of your plot of the land that you own. So this is very typical of Kota, where there are small plots and there is no concept of leaving any space between buildings along two sides. So this is in a nutshell, this is the program of a mix of public housing, student housing, and private housing at the top. So like what I was saying was that you are going to have two structures on either sides of your land. This is where you're going to squeeze in your program. So what we did was we said, okay, how can we scoop out the center and create multiple courtyards and make this structure a little breathable, a little porous kind of structure. And we scooped out these volumes that you see marked in red. This is the section through the program that we eventually developed to the structure, where this is the roadside on the right. You enter the program here and you are coming into this multi-level courtyard open to sky. You have all these are rooms which are flanking the courtyard and looking into the courtyard. This is an open to sky courtyard. And what happens on the top two levels is the private residence of the owners. There's a little bit of a small basement here. It's slightly subterranean. So you have some trees growing in there. So what we effectively created was, instead of having a structure that was open only on two sides of the land, we scooped out the center and allowed the rooms to breathe in from all sides. So basically just created a typology where the student housing could have a courtyard right in the center and not a block of building which basically had no ventilation or no light. So this is this is basically the section. Natural light and ventilation and social spaces were very critical for us to introduce into this project, because when there is a high risk of failure for the students, we felt that the community could garner together and develop a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of support. So the architecture was primarily worked around that context, around that idea, where how can we help build a community for the students who are staying so far away from their parents under great pressure, studying 6 to 7, sometimes 12 hours, 14 hours in this environment. And the Kota Hostel is a small beginning in reimagining students living in the town away from their parents under pressure. These are the plans. You basically have the road on this side. There would be a structure on this side. When we completed the project, the structure on the left had not been done, but the structure on the right was already in place. So we began with building our own wall on the right-hand side here and built this entire structure. But I'm sure within a year or two, this structure will also come up. So one has to assume that this is always going to be a blank wall and a blank wall here. From the road, you enter in here. This is your central courtyard, and these are all the rooms that happen on the side. This is on the upper floor, and I hope you're able to view. These are the rooms with their attached bathrooms and their washrooms here. They all are able to look into the courtyard. So at any point in time, there is huge visual connection between all the students. At the same time, there are cutouts which connect you vertically in the section, and you're also able to look up, look down, and there's a great feeling of openness in that section because of these multi courtyards that it has across the section. This is the roadside view. This is the building which I said has not been done yet. This building was already in place. This is the road. You enter in from here, and as you can see, you can see the way the section works, the porosity, the way you're able to look through the building in itself, as if it's almost like the whole building is a screen. We have also borrowed materiality of stone and created these little facades here, little jalis here. They're called jalis in the local dialect. Jali is a screen. It's basically a perforated screen that's made out of stone, and it's a very typical traditional vernacular piece of a ventilating tool. When you have air that is flowing in through screens of stone, it naturally becomes cooler when it gets into the room. So that's the kind of element that we picked up. So these are all your hostels. So you have level 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is all your hostels, all your student rooms looking outside. And then you have the upper 2 floors, which are your owners owned. These are some images of the project. The use of color yellow is again being borrowed from the local, it's a very popular color, the bright color, which we wanted because we wanted to create an environment in there which is bright and open and airy. And as you're able to see, though there's a lot of light, but it will also allow a lot of air to circulate and hence cool the rooms here. Again, some views of the courtyard. This is the courtyard that is open to sky. The bridge that you see here is on the level which is belonging to the owners. The open to sky courtyard is spanned by this bridge, and it connects the two arms of the residential unit for the owners. And in this picture, you're able to see how you can connect, people can connect across various levels and look down into the courtyard at any point in time. This is a picture of one of the rooms for the students. This is the rear elevation. And as you can see, if you look at this facade here, these are all continuous different projects which belong to different owners. So there's absolutely, there's absolutely no space for any ventilation from two sides of your building at any point in time. So this is the first project that I wanted you all to look at, student housing Atam. Just to kind of conclude on Atam, the meaning of Atam is intimate. I don't know if there is a direct translation for that word, but it's something, it also could mean soul, like S-O-U-L, soul of a person. But in this context, it's more intimate is the correct meaning, and that's the name of the project as well. So I move to the next project. This was a dining pavilion that we did for students. We had done a college for them already, and this was an extension that they wanted us to build for the students in that project. The challenging part of this was, one, that it was in Mumbai, and Mumbai land is very scarce. Trees are even scarcer. You barely find any trees. It's a completely metropolitan region. However, this site was full of trees. So the mandate that we prescribed for ourselves was that we will not cut the trees on the site, and we will build the pavilion along those trees. So that was our self-imposed mandate. I will start with the section here, because just to give you the context, on the left hand side of the screen that you're seeing is the existing college labs, the set of labs that we had made for them. And what they wanted us to do was to add this pavilion, a dining pavilion that would connect these two structures. And you can see that there were already some existing trees on site. So what happened was that there was barely any footprint for us of any considerable scale that would allow us to make a food court or a pavilion for them. So the next slide will show you how that is. So what we did was we built around the trees. So this was a big tree. The structure that you see here is an existing tower that is there on the campus. This was a big, about a 6-7 storied building. I don't remember exactly how many levels. So this was an existing building, and then there is a little one on the side which you can't see here, which we had built as an extension. And this was the third structure that was going to come in. So the dining pavilion in that sense connected the stall tower along to the labs, which you can't see currently in this picture. But it was a pavilion, so it was an open structure. The whole idea was to make it very light, make it a space that is conducive to the children coming in and eating their food, taking a break here. At the same time, give them shade, make sure that there's enough light, shade, protect them from rain. And also allow for some spaces where they could congregate, they could have events. And again, you might find that a common theme is that we are always sort of having this central courtyard or a central congregational space for people to kind of connect and sit around and bond over. This is designed in a locality of Mumbai called Sion. The student dining pavilion, it's basically a partially open space. So it exists as an extension to the indoor cafeteria, which is where, if you can see my cursor, that is the extension. It is designed with primarily 3 objectives in mind. One, it serves as a dining area. Second, it creates a physical link between the site's building that is already there. And it was also to be, the mandate was also to contain a brick amphitheater. So this brick amphitheater that you see in the center, that was also created for informal gatherings. The central structural or architectural pin that holds the whole project together, if I had to pinpoint, would be the structure of the pavilion. So you have this beam structure that is held in place by peripheral circular columns. So this is a view. So the entire pavilion is held together by these circular light steel columns. And what we did was we used that structure to build our seating. So the seating, the cantilever fixed seat is fixed to these columns. And the column also serves as a purpose for us to put light. So your uplighters and your downlighters are fixed here. The beam naturally also holds the roof. So this beam is this column is the central feature that holds the whole project together, where the seating is fixed to the column, the lights are fixed to the column, the roof is fixed to the column, and there is an extent, and it's off. If you can see the section, it's slightly off the plinth, the plate that holds the pavilion. So there's a disconnect between the structure which wraps the entire plinth that is weaving primarily between the trees, which you will see in the next following slides. So this is the column that I was talking about. You have an entire array of steel circular columns that are around. There is a beam here which holds the roof. There is this light polycarbonate roof that floats over this plinth, and this plinth is primarily weaving and going around all the existing trees that are on site. So this is in a nutshell, how we envisaged the project. So the trees guided us in terms of how we want the pavilion to be, and the roof and the footprint of this pavilion is completely contextual to this site. This is the brick amphitheater that you see in the center here. This floor plane is a continuous platform, and here, this is an overhead. You see this translucent canopy that is supported by these slim circular columns. And like I said, the lighting, which you can see here, it's integrated. It's part of the structure. And the roof plane, we purposely put the structure on top of the polycarbonate. So when you're sitting down, you're not really seeing the beams running across. They're not very loud. So it gives an appearance of this polycarbonate kind of floating over your head. And it's a pretty surreal experience because of the trees. The shadows are always splitting. The way the roof is being envisaged is always changing at different times of the day because of the light and the shadow play. This is the detail of how the plinth is connected to the circular column. These are a few pictures of the built structure. So this is the end of this project, the dining pavilion for the students. I move to the next project, which is where we question whether craft belongs to a particular time, or does it allow us to work on it, to interpret it, to contemporize it, or is it a static notion? So the next project is a demonstration of that thinking, that experiments that we were keen to do with. It's called Sienna. It's in a city called Hyderabad in India. It's on the eastern side of India, the site. It was primarily an apartment building located in a hilly area, and it offered beautiful views of the city. It is a slightly elevated site, so you could see really beautiful views. So for us, the fenestrations was an important part. The interesting part about this project is that the planning was completely done when we got the project. So we had no say in how the planning was done. All that the client wanted us to do was the external elevation. He just wanted us to design the skin. He didn't want us to do anything else. So that was another interesting, slightly different way of working on this project. So the client had got everything in. He had got his areas in, and if there are any professionals in the audience, you would know that you have to go to the municipal, get approvals from the building authorities. Your plans are frozen, after which you can't make any changes. And so the client pretty much came to us at that stage. So we still pushed for some changes in the plan. And we said that we are going to move some of the walls. So we replanned the floor layout to some extent so that the two apartment units that you see, there is one apartment unit here and there's one apartment unit here, and there is a central core. So we moved the walls a little bit so that we could facilitate some ventilation through the terraces and the balconies in the apartment. But this was the only intervention that we did in the planning stage. Yeah, this is slightly another view of the plan. You enter in here and there is a central hallway which leads to two apartments on each floor. As you can see, we punctuated the apartments with these two balconies. There are these two punctures that we made here and on each side. And you can see that there are a lot of windows that we said we want to have along this facade because the views around that were so interesting. Pedro, I hope you can see the GIF. Okay. So the second point of intervention, so the second point of intervention was the building skin, which comprises of walls and horizontal sun protection, because it's, again, a very hot city. Working with master brick masons from Pondicherry, which is a city in the south of India, we designed a wall system made from 9-inch thick brick walls that corbelled to carry the load of these stone-faced lintels, or chhajjas that they're called in the local dialect. Glass bay windows are recessed. They're set into the opening, so they give you shade. And at the same time, we are looking at how the cantilevered stone-faced lintels can add an accent to all the windows formally. These were the different modules. We work a lot with scripting. We do a lot of parametric modeling. We use Rhino as our main software, and we have plugins. So we worked on a lot of components to create these modules. And as you can see, this is the formal development of the windows. So this is the sunshade. This is the glass. We corbelled the edges of the fenestrations to kind of give it a more, we worked on the fenestrations primarily, formally, because that was the only intervention in that sense that we could do for the project. To ensure the structural integrity of the wall corbelling, we designed these wooden templates. So the way each brick was twisted was kind of designed by working with the masons. So we made these molds almost, which were then used by the brick masons to lay the courses of bricks. So we do a lot of this collaboration where we are very keen to learn and to work with craftsmen, with people who are actually working with their hands, while we reinforce that craft with cutting edge technology in terms of software, in terms of analysis of structure. So it's a fantastic combination of using the craft and the intelligence of your craftsmen, your resources that you already have, along with the latest technological tools that you have in your studio. So this is a perfect symphony. This project is an example of something like that. These are construction pictures. And you can see how the molds might have been used to create these sort of edges for all the openings. And this is the finished building facade. And then the project is called Sienna naturally because of the color of the brick. So we've taken the name from the color of the materiality that we are using. Yeah, so this is Sienna. We move to the next project. This was a factory project that we had been commissioned to do, again in an extremely hot site environment where the site was completely surrounded by these metal sheds, metal warehouses, very opaque, heat reflecting, light reflecting context that was around on all sides of the site that we had. And we were really looking to see what could we do, what could we introduce in the project that would help break that opacity, the harshness, the materiality, the almost characterless site context that was available, that was existing on the site. The project was a factory. I will run you through more about the factory in the consecutive slides. The materiality that we were looking at was concrete because of the machinery that was going to be there. And these are the surrounding structures that you can see in this view, which was primarily windowless, openingless metal warehouses. And this was our plot. And it had a slight, it was not a perfect rectangle. This is the road, the approach. And rather than its surrounding structures which were opaque and they created this really hard edge with the passing road, the building was the endeavor was to enter into a more open dialogue with the context, and we created that by opening the concrete facade. You see in this view that it's like a concrete block, and we opened this building by taking out some of the mass in there and opening it out to the road. You will get a better idea in the following slides. Yeah. So this is the concrete mass that we did. So this was a massing exercise. And what we did was we scooped out this entry part and opened out the building from the inside, looking out onto the road. I hope you can see my cursor, but I hope you get the idea from the image even otherwise, that we opened out this corner, opened out the center. So all the functions of the factory were on the side. Yeah. This is the site plan. This is completely, if one were on the site, you would notice how hot it is just to be around, primarily because of these structures that surround this little plot. This is our plot, and on all sides you have these warehouses which are made out of metal tin sheets primarily. This is the road, and our program is on the ground level is in this L-shaped manner. It flanks the central courtyard, and we literally took out this corner from the massing. This is a more zoomed in view of the ground floor plan. So this is the road. You approach, you get into the building from this bridge. What we did was we scooped out this land from there. There was already, it was a contoured land. So this was its lowest point. So we built in a reservoir or like a pond. We built it in here, introduced some landscape element here, connected it to this courtyard, which was a spill out for the people working in here. So you entered in from here. There was admin. There were all these, there is this administrative office here, facilities here for the workers. This was their equipment, their machine rooms. This was also a factory here. This is all on the ground floor, so it spills out at this level. And you could also, if you want to take a break, you could also go down these steps where this body of water had been created. And I will talk more about this part in the consecutive slides. So this is your first level, which is at ground level. This is your upper floor, which looks into the courtyard here. And you have a terrace, which is the roof of the lower floor here. And again, you're looking into the courtyard. At the same time, you're opening out the views from this arm. This was a completely glazed window through which you could look out. This is the section. This is your floating arm, which is sitting at the second level. This is your ground level. You enter in from here. This is the bridge that we saw in the previous pictures. And from the ground level, you could go down to the naturally contoured lowest level on site that we already had. When we initially went to see the site, the first time we went to site, this was actually filled with water, and this little pond was used to wash buffaloes that were roaming around in that area. So this was really like a bathtub for all the cattle. so we retained that contour, and we said we will still try and see what we can do through, rainwater harvesting or collecting of water, and we left that pit in on site and built around it. And this is the finished project. This is how you enter, and you see this courtyard beyond, and then you have this mass sitting. This is the entire glazing looking on the north side. In India, we always prefer to have our openings on the north, because that's where you get glare-free light coming in from. I'm sorry. So this is the north-facing function. I think I can't remember if it was administrative or if it was executive program sitting here. But from this, you could look out onto a lake, which was at some distance. This is a more close-up view of that. So while we were using concrete as a materiality, the intention was always to make it feel light and make it feel like it's floating on this void. That was the central idea. You can see a bit of the amphitheater that is here. What we've also done is, because it rains very heavily in Mumbai, which is where the site is located, we've also channelized all the monsoon rainwater runoff to collect in this pit here. So if there's ever flooding, it'll all come, even if there's flooding from the roadside, because there is a little bit of a lake on the other side of the road. We kind of made this like a collection chamber. And this space is used as a shaded breakout area for the employees. And to traverse this chasm, to go over this pit, you have this three-pronged bridge, which connects you to the different parts of the program. You can see there is a little bit of water here, which is collected. And that helps immensely in cooling the space as well. These are some pictures of the inside. As you can see, this is how it opens out. This gives you a view of how the site context is, how hard it is, how hot it can be with heat and light just reflecting off this metal sheet. And it's a very, very dead sort of context. So we wanted to create something that would be in complete contrast in terms of volume, in terms of materiality, in terms of porosity. These are some views of the production spaces inside the factory. There is a lot of light, and there's a lot of shade. As you can see in the detailing of the window, we ensured that there is a lot of shade. That was the end of the factory, the concrete void that we made. The next project is a project that is very close to my heart. This was before we moved and I started the Chicago office. This was the last project that I worked on, and on site there. This is way back in 2019. This is called the Temple of Steps in a place called Nandyal, which is in India, which is in the eastern part of India. Again, an extremely hot, arid region where the temperatures can go up to 45 degrees centigrade. There aren't many trees there. The local material that is available is stone. Beautiful limestone that is available there, and there is a rich history of temples, rich history of religion, of faith, of spiritualism in this area. And we were commissioned to make this temple for a cluster of villages around a cement factory. So the cement factory company said that we would like to make this temple for the villagers close by. This is a miniature which has been prepared in the same artistic style of the local textiles and the local art that's created in these villages. And in that same style, this is a representative of the project, where these are the two shrines that you see, and this is all water around that. And this is a small enclave for the priests and for the kitchen. And then there are these smaller ponds that happen, and then there's a little bit of greenery around here. So this is just a representation done by our team, our design team, in just carrying forward the art that is available in Nandyal. And the brief was to design a temple for the residents of the villages, like I said, and an extremely dry terrain of Nandyal. So the main concern was to provide a space which would marry the socio-cultural expectations of a temple with the ecological framework and the dynamics of the site. The negotiation of land and water with steps is a significant part of India's architectural heritage, as it's seen in the ghats of the city of Banaras. And I will show you what ghats is. Ghats is a very Indian word, and I will show you what ghats mean. The planning of the temple itself was based on a 10th century temple of the same deity, called Tirupati. So we had to, there were very strict sort of guidelines given to us on how the temple had to be done. It was laid to us by the priest who would be a part of the temple complex. And the construction process, primarily we used available black limestone and corbelling of those limestone to form the main body of the temple. And the same cobble profile, we said we will also make the walls in the same profile. So the roof, the walls, the entire project was envisaged as one entity made out of stone, almost as if it was sculptured. This is what a ghat is. This is a temple section. This is an image of a city called Banaras or Varanasi in India. It is a city that is on the banks of river Ganga, which is the biggest river and it's a very revered river in India. So this is the temple, and this is how they negotiate the connection between water and land. And these steps become a very, very vibrant space where a lot of activities happen, a lot of rituals happen in Varanasi. It's also a space for congregation when there are big festivals, especially if there is some, like an auspicious time. Let's say there is some full moon, then these would be full of people who would be praying to the gods, who would be having little rituals out here. And we drew very heavily from this context, from this historical heritage that we have, given that we have so many rivers, and temples are primarily located along the rivers from many, many, centuries on. So the ecological strategy for the project began with, we said, how do we bring groundwater to the site? The site did not have river like how it is there in Kashi or in Banaras, like I said. And we were like, how do we get water to the temple? It's a dry, arid region. So we were looking at an ecological strategy, not just to kind of create the same sort of ambience, but also to make sure that that place thrives ecologically. And what could we do there? So when we went to the site, the first time when we went there, we found that there were puddles of water on the site. And then on further inquiry, we were told that this was actually waste groundwater that was being pumped onto the site, and that water came from a nearby limestone quarry. So every time they quarried for limestone, they would hit the groundwater, and then that groundwater would be pumped and thrown here. So what we did was we said, okay, let's collect that water, make a reservoir, and locate our temples on that ground, and kind of juxtapose the ponds and the temple. So though we don't have a river, we're going to kind of reimagine the temple that is typically set on riverbanks. So that was our strategy. These are the initial sketches that we were looking at. Kund, which you see written here, Kund, Kund is the local term for this negotiation of land and water, where you see the steps that keep going under the ground and become a reservoir. They hold the water, but the same sort of form continues to become the steps. So this is a very typical Indian, architectural feature, and it's called kund. So we said we're going to have a kund on either sides of the temple, and we would have the temple almost rising out of the ground. So that was a basic sort of idea that we had. These are the initial study models that we made for the project. We work in the studio, we do a lot of physical models. We work with wood, we work with 3D printing, along with digital. So we believe in the craft of using our hands to create as much as we work on software such as Rhino, and we use plugins. So yeah, so it's a very interesting design process that we have. It's not just that people are sitting on the computer and only imagining it through digital models. modeling physically with paper, with wood, like I said, with different kind of materials. We even use concrete, we use concrete models. So a variety of materials are used, and that's an important part of our design development. These ghats or this kund that you're looking at, we imagine this was a central idea to this project. We imagined that these flight of steps that lead down to the water body would be a buzz with people who would use it for their bathing traditionally, that they have to wash their feet, they have to wash their hands, they have to cleanse themselves. So water is a very, very important element when you're visiting the temple. This is a plan of the project. There are two shrines. This is the big shrine of the deity Balaji, and there is a smaller shrine here for traditionally you would have a main deity. In the Indian context, you have a main deity, and there is always a vehicle. There is always another god or a smaller god who would be his vehicle, who would help him go from one universe to the other. So there is also a deity for him. This is the deity for his vehicle. This is the deity for the main god. Then so you enter in from the left hand side, and you are walking along the east-west axis and going straight into the temple. Temple planning has some set guidelines. Typically, we do not, as architects, play with those. We go by those guidelines because those are an important part of the planning, of temple planning. But we try and work with that and see how we can, kind of contemporize the planning. So this is the shrine, and then these are the corbelled walls which go and meet the reservoirs, the ponds that we created on site with the wastewater that came from the quarry. This is there were residences for priests. There's a kitchen, and there is a prasad counter. Prasad is you basically offer food to the gods, and once we believe that once the gods have partaken that, then that is then distributed to everybody. That is called prasad. So the distribution of that food is from here. So you are looking at huge crowds of people collecting here, and so a lot of open spaces. Spaces for people to collect, to sit, to connect with, to bond. This is the section. This is the main shrine. This is the smaller shrine. These are the flight of steps that go into the water. This is the priest and the kitchen enclave. This is a bird's eye view of the built project. This is the main shrine. This is the water body that you see on the side that was created with the wastewater. This is again a space that is left open for the villagers. Many times they would have, I don't know what it's like. They have these functions where they need to have not bonfires, but they are holy fires around which people will sit and they will have religious rituals. So we've given them a space for this. This is the smaller shrine. And this, under these flight of steps, is housed the kitchen and the priest's residence. The cement plant, which financed this for all the villages in the vicinity, is here in the background. So you can see there is a village out here, and there's a village out here. This is the main road that connects them. So they all drive in from this road, from these roads, and then this is like a driveway. As you're approaching, you're always seeing the shrine at the end of that road. This is an east-west axis. This is the pond that we built. This is the smaller shrine, and this is the priest and the kitchen's enclave. More pictures of the same. This is an Indian priest. Typically, you will have women decorating the shrine. This is black limestone, local limestone that we used. So we just basically corbelled the stones to create the temple. This is when you're coming from the east-west axis that I showed you in the previous slide. This is what you would see. So this is the central idea of the project, where we are negotiating land and water with steps. So this entire, if I had to sum up the project, it would be this how do you negotiate water and land? And this is part of India's architectural heritage, as is seen in those pictures that I showed you in the previous slide. These are the deities inside, and you can see that there is a skylight here, which throws light on the deities. So this is one temple project. I'm going to move to the next project, which is called Maya Somaixa Library. It was a library for children. Pedro, just one, are we good on time? Let me know if you want me to speed up. Pedro, you are on mute. So just, yeah, do you want me to speed up? Are we good? Or do you want me to hurry
No, are you
up?
good? Are we
Okay,
good?
good.
No need to hurry up. Take the time you need.
Okay, all right, thank you.
We're all
So the
ears
next
for you.
project, yeah, okay, thank you. I hope my speed and I'm trying to talk a little slowly so the translation works, but feel free anytime if you think you want me to slow down on something. So the next project is Maya Somaixa Library. It was a library in an existing school complex for children. The name of the city or the village in this instant is called Kopargaon. Primarily, this is an area a region where it's full of sugarcane fields, and the economy was boosted by sugar factories. Now, of course, sugar factories aren't doing so well, so it's seeing some slightly harder days. But the existing school was very keen that we build a library for the children here. And we felt that the library should not be just a place where there are books for children to just pick up, but it's also got to be conducive to the child who doesn't want to read to also come into the library to pick a book and create an atmosphere where he can be lost in this world of books. So how would a child look at a library? And again, because it was in a school, there was no fixed audience, right? You had children from kindergarten who were 4 years, 5 years old, right up to children who were in their 10th grade. So you're looking at a diverse market or a diverse customer base or a client base or a user base who's ranging from say 6 years to 16 years. So the architecture had to respond formally to this sort of diverse user in terms of age and size, and with all of them having the same intent of wanting to read books. So given that challenge, we looked at this intuitively. As a child, what do you want to do? You want to look at landscape where children you often see running up the mountains and running down the mountains and parks, right? So we kind of drew from that and alluding to that intuitive impetus that children have towards landscape. We imagined this building to be an extension, a formal extension of the ground. If the ground in itself went up and down and became like a mound on which children could run up and down, how would that be? And we thought we could use brick as a material for its tactility and availability, and also as a utility against an insulation against the strong sun. So this was the basic idea, that the ground itself extends formally as landscape and basically is housing the library. These are the first couple of images that we were looking at when we started developing the landscape. On the first site visit, it was interesting because they already had some geodesic structures built as part of the school buildings. So we were very keen that yes, the users are open to doing a slightly different formal development on the site, because the rest of the buildings were completely rectangular and cuboid. So we had no hesitation in, like we said, taking the ground in itself to become like a landscape form. So the construction technology of the project is also very central to it. We were looking at the regional and the local context, and how can we use the material efficiencies of the brick, and how can we use the embedded labor practices that are still there in the country, and how can we efficiently build the brick and the material to leverage the form. And what we did was we used a hybrid of principles ranging from the Catalan tile vaulting system to the compression ring detail from the work of Eladio Dieste, I don't know if the students in the audience might know about him, but it would be great if they could Google D'Este's work. And so combining those ideas of the Catalan tile vaulting and the compression system, we used Rhino Vault plugins, and using this software, we designed the entire vault. And I will show you in the next couple of slides how that works. So this is a detail of how we had the vault touch the ground. So the vault, the entire structure is a series of vaults which meets the ground only in 5 points. So it literally it's just this 5 points that it, kind of delicately sort of rests on. And this is a detail of that. This is the plan of the site. So these were all existing buildings which had classrooms. And what they gave us was this really little piece of land which had no, really any presence. There was no presence. This was the bit of land that they said, okay, build a library here. As you see, if you come in from here, this is the approach into the school complex. There is no way you can even see the library, because there is this building here, there is this building here, there are some buildings happening here, there is a building here. So literally this is a leftover sliver of land that they left for us in the corner, a little piece of land here, and that's all that we had. So the vault responds to the site that is available to us and spreads itself organically here. And like I said, it meets the ground in about 5 points and rises up. This is a slightly zoomed in picture of the plan. So at the plan level, at the ground level, you see how the furniture is kind of responding to the shape of the form of the vault. And we have books arranged everywhere. And these are also furniture pieces which hold books. This is the section. This is how the vault comes and meets the ground. And I was talking to you, remember, about how you have children of different ages and sizes coming in here. So the section works beautifully because we've seen children, really tiny children, wanting to go and snuggle into these little spaces, which right under the vault and reading, and the older ones sticking to the benches and the chairs and the conventional methods of reading the books. So the vault in that sense allowed for even the smallest child to feel secure to take a book and snuggle into it, almost as if, the way they go and sit under the tables. So this kind of mimicked that sort of and a section. We did a lot of mock-ups before we actually went in for construction, because this was something new. This is me many years ago, and since I was the fattest at that point, they had me climb the mock-up and see if it would hold my weight. So that was funny. So that these are the vaults that we kind of tried at various points. So you can see this thin, almost like about maybe about 4 inches. I don't think it was, I think it was totally even less than 100 mm in thickness, the final vault. These are pictures of construction. This is the formwork. This is the finished vault. And you can, of course, you can climb, children can walk over it, anybody could walk over it. This is the proximity of the existing building. So you might get a sense of, when I was saying that we had to squeeze in the building in the leftover part, it's literally responding to what land was made available to us. You can see the 3 layers of bricks that were sandwiched to make the skin here. We have avoided puncturing the vault at all. So you do not see any light fixture on the vault. There are no fans. There are no lights which are hanging from the roof or from the ceiling. Everything is taken from the floor because we didn't want to touch this at all. Yeah, so that was the library. The next project is Jetwan, again, in a site which is very close to the library. Jetwan in Buddhist mythology, Jetwan means a sacred grove of trees, where the Buddha gave the majority of his teachings. So whenever he would move from villages to villages, typically they would have his meetings in these grove of trees. So Jetavan is the actual meaning means it's a grove of trees. So that is the name of the project. The project was primarily a vocational center, a Buddhist, a center not just for Buddhists, but for anybody. If they initially started it as Buddhist, but then eventually it became a learning center for the poor people in the vicinity. The site lies, you can see this is the site. The site lies on the campus of a sugar factory. You can see the molasses tank out here, and it acts as a spiritual and skill development center for its workers. So there is a sugar factory here. So the workers and their children and their families and other people from the nearby villages would use this as a spiritual and skill development center, and providing spaces for meditation, for yoga, and various other skills. So that was the project, Jetwan. These are the initial pictures when we went to site, and you can imagine how excited we were to see these groves of trees. When we went there, the owner of the land said, "Oh, take out every tree," because the trees are so dense. He could not imagine how we could even build over there. So it was a small patch of land with about 55 to 56 trees, and he was like, "Yeah, that's fine. You can take all the trees off." But again, even as in the other previous project, we said no, we do not want to take the trees off, and we will build around it. And that's we were, I think, pretty successful in doing that. These are the initial pictures, and you can see how close the trees are. There are mango trees. There are a lot of fruit trees. So a lot of birds, occupy that, and we strongly believe that the trees and the birds are on that land before us, and we don't have the right to sort of take them away from their homes and evict them almost. There was also a railway line close by. So this is the site plan, and you can see the trees that are there. And there is hardly any footprint that is available to, have a contiguous built structure. So as you can see, these are all initial sketches of how we can doodle around the trees, how we can have these separate structures. So because of the trees, we never imagined it to be one structure, but we said we will break it into little, enclaves and then connect them. So they needed a meditation hall, they needed residential services, facilities, they needed administrative, they needed catering facilities. So all these are the initial doodles and the plans. Buddhist iconography is very, very strong. So initially we were very influenced by the form of the stupa. This is the stupa. So we were very, very influenced by that. And our initial doodles are all based on that sort of form. And the reason why I'm showing you these images, because you will realize that the final project looks nothing like this. And how one, as an architectural studio, you kind of invest a lot in a particular idea and it seems to work. But we've never hesitated and said, no, we spent 3 months on it, but something doesn't seem right. And then we go back and we interrogate ourselves, we question ourselves, and we're happy to start from, square one. We have never, ever sort of compromised on a project idea because we felt that we spent so much time on it, and it means that we have to redo something. If we think that the project is not been addressed in the way that it should, we are happy to throw all the old drawings out and start again at any point in time. And that's pretty much what while the basic ideas stayed the same, the formal development changed, and I will show you how. So these are, again, like I said, the physical models that we are constantly doing. So an interesting thing happened. We finished the project. We finished the design documentation. We had, done all the drawings. And the first step typically is to do a line out, right, on site. I don't know how it is done in your part of in your country, but what we typically do is once we've got our plans in, we actually go on site and they use this line powder. It's almost like chalk powder that is laid on site. And these sites, let me remind you, these are not in your developed cities. These are very far away from metro centers. You're working with people with limited, resources. You don't have the most skilled labor available. The temperatures are, it's a very hot area. The temperatures are in 40s. Like you see, there is no shade. So there are some constraints that come with working in the rural areas of India. So we use these slightly rudimentary ways of, so there is no total station. If there are professionals, I'm sure you all would know that we use total station now to do all our line outs, but these are not done like that. These are literally done manually by laborers and they draw these lines out almost. So as you can see, this is in summer, so there's no foliage. The leaves have fallen off quite a bit. Just about the start of spring, I think. Sorry, it wasn't summer. I think that this is just when this tree was beginning to flower, maybe around April, probably. And we did this line out, and you can see the form of stupa kind of resonating here. And we went to a nearby place there to eat lunch. And again, like I said, very simple places, very simple facilities. And the section of that place where we were eating lunch was so fascinating because what they had done was they had raised the roof of that pavilion, of the dining space of the central courtyard just to give shade. But what it did was it allowed for this light and this little bit of green to come inside the space. So imagine if this roof were at this level, it had been lowered, how that volume would have been. But somebody in there decided, and it wasn't, I'm sure it wasn't a big architect, it must have been a fabricator from the village who said, why don't we just raise this up? And such a small gesture, but it completely changed this because you had breeze coming in from here. You were able to see the trees as you're eating. And that really kind of resonated with us. And we said, why aren't we doing something like this in our project, where even when you're inside the hall, how can you be still connected, not just through windows at your eye level when you're sitting down, because remember that when you're in the meditation hall, they're all going to be sitting on the floor. Nobody's going to be standing up. So we're like, at that level, how would it be if I'm able to see the sky from where I am? And that kind of triggered another investigation. We changed the plans a bit. These were the revised plans where we said, okay, we are going to do the administration here, two big halls here for vocational training and meditation, and residential facilities here. And we still, as I said, we keep all the trees intact. This was because it was for the villagers. It was a very collaborative effort. So we would have meetings in the evenings with the villagers. So you can see the children are curious to see what the plans are, and they would draw over it. They would talk to us about it. So it was a very, very interesting experience. We then decided to collaborate with a team of craftsmen called Hunarshala, and the materials and the construction of this project was then developed in collaboration with not just the local villagers, but with this group of people called Hunarshala. Like I said, Hunar is craft and Shala is school, so the school of craft. So these are people who are based out in the western part of India, and they collaborated with us to build this project. Hunarshala is based in Gujarat, and their work is centers on the revival of local knowledge, of local technologies, skills, working with communities, with simple people who have the talent, who develop the capacity to shape their own habitats with their own methods. So vernacular, for lack of, if I had to just kind of concise it. So through their collaboration, we used old and new techniques, materials to make this assemblage of traditional and modern building. And you will see these are again meetings that we had with Hunarshala. These are sketches when we were on site, trying to figure out how we are going to navigate the plan along the trees. So these are all details where we said, we are going to avoid the trees. We were looking for earth and clay, if there was any material that could be locally sourced. And finally, what happened was that it became a bricolage of locally sourced and recycled materials. It has been made with what was on hand, using construction methods with existing materials. So the walls were load-bearing rammed walls, which were a composite of basalt stone dust. That stone dust was a waste from a quarry of about 13 kilometers away from the site. And the waste was so difficult that to take away from the quarry, that the quarry owners were actually paying people to take the quarry dust away from the quarry. So we actually picked that and said, okay, we did this testing to see if we could use the quarry waste, the stone dust. And with Hunarshala, with the people that I showed you in the previous slide, we tried different combinations of the stone dust with fly ash. Fly ash, again, was a byproduct from the sugar factory that I showed you in the initial site. So we used fly ash, we used basalt stone dust and a bit of cement as a stabilizer. And we made blocks out of those. And we decided after successful experiments that they would be our wall material. And the roof, so what you see in this image is how we've got the different materials. So the quarry dust is coming in from here. The wood that we wanted to use for a roof came from shipyards where they use, they scavenge wood from the ships. And we used bricks and tiles which were thrown away. The bricks were bought, but the tiles we used they were repurposed from old homes. And all that came together to make the project. These are all our initial pictures of the experiments that we did with fly ash and the stone dust. This is the process of making the rammed earth walls. And this is what happened to the section after we had lunch in that place the other day, where we said, what if this would be your typical section where you're in the hall, and then what you're seeing when you're walking or you're sitting down is literally the roof and the wall. And what if we turned it, if we inverted the roof, would it change? Given the grove of trees around, would it kind of completely change the sectional experience, the spatial experience in that space? That was the thinking that we were exploring. These are our, like I said, I would often travel to Hunarshala, who's based in another part of the country, and I would be there with them, I and our team would be there with them, and we would be discussing the wooden trusses and the roof construction, and all these are drawings that we kind of worked with them on. And this is how the roof then was envisaged. So the roof profile was inverted. We said we will get a central valley. We will get this central gutter in which the water will run off. And then we will have this flowing through this gutter, and then we will rain harvest it. So the interior spaces are a function of this outside setting. And because of this inverted roof profile, there is a very light feeling to the entire structure. Also, the inside is then very beautifully connected to the foliage outside. This is the shipyard from where we got wood. So we went and picked up the wood for the roof. These are how the trusses were designed, and you can see the rammed earth walls. The wood is exposed. We are not hiding anything. Everything is the way it is. This is the central gutter. So this is the inverted roof. And this is the labor. These are the craftsmen that come in. They are local villagers in some cases. Simple people who've not had formal education, but have amazing talent, amazing energy, amazing vibe. Using simple materials that are available to them. No degrees, not earning, not rich. This is not a lucrative industry, but happy nonetheless to be a part of this project. And it was a beautiful experience for me to be a part of it. The lady out here is actually making mud rolls with these jute sacks. These are all jute sacks. Jute is a material, I don't know if you are familiar with it, but jute is a material, textile material. And typically these are used to store, farmers will put their rice in it and sell it. So this is very common material that is used in that part of the country. And this is all waste products. So what they did was they filled this with mud, they made mud rolls of these kind, and then covered the underside of the roof with these mud rolls as insulation. Here. So this is how the temperature, while outside it could be 40 degrees, 45 degrees, inside it will be cooler at least by 10 degrees centigrade, thanks to the insulation from this. These are the repurposed tiles on the roof. These are some construction photographs. This is again testing how we want to lay the bricks. This was a lot of hands-on project. The flooring is again a traditional method. It's a combination of mud and dung, cow dung, because cattle is available there. So cow dung and mud together is plastered on the floor, and that is your floor finish. It is also known for its antiseptic properties. And this is a traditional floor finish that is done in a lot of Indian villages. And these are the images of the finished project. This is the roof, inverted roof. This is the gutter. The water falls in here, it goes down the steps, and then we collect it. Pedro, I have one more project. Let me know if you want me to go through it, or if we have a constraint for time.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay.
We go to the
Yeah.
end then.
So this is the last project that I'm going to run you through. It's another temple. This was our oldest project, which is why I've left it at the end. The interesting thing is this project became very famous. We won some awards for it, and we were so excited. We thought we would get lots of temples to do after this. We never ever got a temple for the next 10, 15 years. So it was quite strange. I don't know why that happened, but yeah, it happened the way it did. So it's a Shiv temple. Shiv is the name of the deity. This is a traditional temple, and we studied the formal, in section, how typically temples would be. And you can see that also echoing in the other temple that I showed you previously, the form of a temple. Again, traditional temples, they have pretty straightforward planning, where you have the Garbhagriha, that is which is written here. It's the inner sanctum. This is again an Indian dialect, Indian word, so it's fine if you can't translate it, but it's primarily the inner sanctum in which the deity is sitting. And you have a hall, you have an assembly hall in front of it. This is a traditional way of planning the temple. It's always along the east-west axis. This was the site. Again, a lot of trees on site. But what we thought of, we kind of said we don't want to build one structure, and we said, what if we look at the sky as the roof and these trees as the wall, and we just build this inner sanctum here. So the nature in itself becomes its architecture. We are not going to build another layer of built environment on top of that. And that was the central idea. This is the plan. This is the inner sanctum, and we just walk along this east-west axis going towards this inner sanctum. And there was a pond out here, a natural pond, which you can see in the next slide, which you can see in this section. So what we built was this inner sanctum, and we made this as the assembly hall. And we said the sky is going to be the roof, and the trees are going to be its walls. The components, the threshold as the frame for the inside as well as the outside, and this amphitheater on the side, it transforms this religious typology into a hybrid cultural one, because this completely kind of activates the space here, becomes a social space along with a religious and spiritual space.
I'm just cutting our recording on 2 here. Alguém,
Yeah.
pessoal? Quem puder abrir a câmera para a gente poder acolher a Aparna. Aparna, I guess you can stop sharing your screen. So
Okay.
while
All
people
right.
decide if they wanted to ask something or
Sure.
not, I'll start
Sure.
then. Well, you start your speech questioning about the supposed way of thinking in India, if there is an Indian way of thinking. And for us, for me, I can say some drawings you show seem a lot Indian-like. Mainly the first temple one, and also the student housing.
Yes.
Is there a statement in that sense, or do you think it's just something inevitable somehow? How do you deal with that? It's really
So
wonderful drawings.
yes, thank you so much. No, so the miniature, so I don't think we can really, like we said, there is no one way of Indian thinking. And the studio is always kind of exploring as we move from project to project, what is it that we can learn from the site of that space, of that. So it's varying. When we are working for a temple in, say, south of India, it's very different when you're working on the students' hostel in the north of India. They're so
Yeah,
different. They could be two different countries. It's pretty much like Europe, like India is a big country and it's that diverse. So when we're looking at the architecture, it's not design is not isolated, or it's not in silos. So we're also looking at different arts that exist in that and see what we can take from it. So the miniatures was a way to kind of document that approach and that initiative, and say that it's different for every space. It's very contextual. So that is, I think, a way of capturing the ethos of our thinking, that we are going to be doing miniatures when we finish the project in that particular style or in that particular design, and kind of record it. So I don't know if I answered your question, Pedro, but it's aligned to that, where we are saying that we must respect the context, we must respect the history, we must respect the repository of art, design, crafts that already predate us when we go to that site. So it's a very
nice.
humble sort of approach to the way we are not only designing, but also the way we are documenting it.
Yeah. No, I see. Maybe you can say that
Yeah,
instead
yeah,
of a
yeah.
statement, this is more a search of a coherence between the ideas involved in the design and the representation of it, and the way to show this to people, isn't it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Alguma pergunta, pessoal, dos presentes? Well, people are usually shy to ask. Let me
But
see. I
that's
guess there's
fine.
one.
That's fine.
Deborah has one. I'll translate to you. I would like first to congratulate you for your wonderful work and inspiring one. And which you believe is the biggest challenge that architects face today? And what advice would you give for students which are preparing for this beautiful work as architects?
Um, I think the biggest challenge is us, I think, in terms of how what our beliefs are, and whether we are looking to be trapped in the past. Is the past freeing us, or is it holding us back? I think that is the biggest challenge. And advice, like I said, I think it would just be that, like I said, be there is nothing to fear. Like, there is nothing to fear in terms of questioning ourselves, uh, uh, admitting that we don't like what we're doing, that we should do it again. We have projects where we are, like I said, we've worked a lot and then we go back 10 steps. But to be able to do that, I think, is good. It's hard, but to be able to do that, I think, is a good process. And um, to believe in the process, to believe in the process of design. Like, we don't get up in the morning thinking that we know what we want to do. It's not like we knew what the Temple of Steps was going to be looking like on the first day. So to kind of have faith in the design process, I think is the biggest advice I would give.
That's a wonderful one, I guess.
And thank you, Deborah, for your kind words.
And we have another one from Denise. Denise is asking from the library project, the 3 layers of bricks that we see. How does that work? Because in the first photos, she's seen that there's a rebars, steel rebars from underneath. But how did that happen? That the other bricks end up in the bottom of it, underneath that?
No, so the rebars were not used for reinforcement. They were used for as formwork. So
Oh, I
we,
see.
yeah, so we created the layer, the shape, the form. The underside of the bricks was a grid of points, and those points were manifested by the rebars that we placed on the plinth.
Oh, I
And
see.
the entire structure works as compression, right? It's a compression structure. So you do
Yeah.
one layer in a particular direction, then you put mortar, then you do the second layer in the other direction, then you lay mortar, and then you do the third one in the other direction. And when they come together, you put a compression ring at the top. That's how it gets held. And then you take off then you remove the rebars.
Like a Catalan
It is a
vault or something.
Catalan vault. It is a Catalan vault. It is a Catalan tile vault.
I see.
It's exactly
So that
that.
there's no steel at all inside of that layers.
Except for that compression ring at the top.
I see. I see. I have another question on that. I was curious since the first time I've seen this project of you,
Oh,
because
okay.
you put that inspiration of the shield on the top of some hills and
Yes,
everything.
yes.
Did you consider making some steel, some earth hills and using it as a mold, building on top of it, and then removing the earth or not?
We've done that in another project, actually. We had done that in another project where we actually had an earth mound, and then we cast and then we removed the earth from the bottom. But we felt this was a more effective way because we could reuse the rebars in construction again.
I see.
And the logistics of transporting earth and making the mound and then removing it, that was your question, right, Pedro? I got your question
Yes,
right?
yes, precise.
Yeah. So we did that in another project, but that the earth that came to make the formwork came from excavation on that site. But in this site, we had no excavation. There was no excavation as such.
I see. I see. Rebeca, quer fazer uma pergunta? Você apareceu aqui, não sei exatamente por quê. Quer aproveitar e abrir a câmera e fazer uma perguntinha? Não, pelo visto não. Well, I have another one. I have many ones, so if people don't ask, I'll stay here the long evening, the whole evening. But I'll spare you that because I know you must be tired.
No. Go ahead.
Of course, each culture has its own relation with privacy in living spaces, and for the student housing project, it's noticeable that life is somehow shared inside the building void in a very high degree, with most openings given inside the patio. So, how is that taken for you in India, this privacy issues? I know you're a very populous country, so the closeness is almost inherent to
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
living there. But how do you face that?
So, in context to this project, the student housing, there is an option for the privacy is not compromised. You still have your individual rooms to go into, but the minute you open the door, you have the option of interacting, not just to the people in the hallway, but to interact with nature itself, to look into the courtyards, and you can have levels of interaction, right? So you're able to look down. You don't have to interact with them if you don't want to, but the hallway still, and the way the corridor is done, it kind of opens out in some spaces, so you can actually sit there. It allows for a couple of, maybe 3 4 boys can stand there and talk. It widens at some spaces, so it allows you to modulate the privacy and the social interaction that you want. So it is not limiting in any way. So yeah, so that's how it is. It's, I think, the architect, if I had to sort of draw your attention to the plan, the rooms are all along that corridor, right? So they are looking into it only if you step out. So there is no window between the room and into the corridor. So the privacy is maintained.
I see. I see. Mais alguma pergunta, pessoal? Estamos aproximando do final aqui, então pode ser as últimas chances. Well, while people don't ask more, I have some more. You've mentioned how important it is for you at the office to go beyond the digital drawing tools without avoiding taking advantage of it. So how do you believe architecture students today, having usually hero hand drawing skills, could use non-digital means while making their projects? Can they explore that better?
I think they definitely should. I think that would be my advice. And we have a very strong culture of model making in the studio, and it, I think, allows you to explore scale. It allows you to gets you an insight into the spatial equations in a particular context, in a particular project. So I think it's extremely critical. My personal opinion is extremely critical that you must look at model making as a tool to explore design development, for sure. And nothing takes away from technology. I mean, technology is something that we cannot do without it. We must equally be invested in technology as we are invested in making models or sketching or drawing or going on site, making mock-ups. So it's not just about making scaled models in the studio, but even when you're looking at details, like doing 1:1 details, going on site, exploring different kinds of details, I think that's very important. I think the tactile part of that interaction is important.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more with you. And there's something I always tell my students that, of course, creativity in a broader sense is super important, but there's no form, there's no architectural form without a constructive solution for that, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
And
I
materials,
see.
right? Things like materials are something that are tactile. You cannot feel the material in, I mean, we have VR, we have virtual reality, we have all that, but the senses that we have are only to be experienced in person, right? Like, so for sense, for smell, for eyes, for to listen to the way your feet move on wood, or they will move on a metal surface, or the way light reflects off a material is something that is very tactile. So for that, I think you have to explore these options, these tools.
Yes, of course. Of course. And since your whole lecture is sometimes based in some provocative questions, which are amazing, I'll maybe return one of them to you. Of course, the project you've shown us explain this somehow, but the question is, can development be sustainable? And or how do you address this in SPNA? Not exactly. We see a practical example of that, but as a policy. For example, if someone gets to you with a commercial project that sometimes you understand that shouldn't be built, how do you address this as a collective policy inside the office?
Um, I think we have, I mean, for instance, in the project J1, the grove of trees, the land that was initially picked by the client was another piece of land. We just happened to be walking around the factory and we saw this little piece of land which was fenced. But he was like, no, but this is not meant for building because, you know, this is too small. There are too many trees. Nobody can build here. Let's take the trees out. And so we convinced him to use the site and we said we will keep the trees. So this is a more direct where we are saying that, you know, we want to keep the trees and it's a more tangible. Sustainability is not always in terms of keeping the trees or using recycled. I think it's a much bigger principle and it has to be taken also in view of whether a project in itself is sustainable. So for us, projects like Jetwan are very important, where we are contributing to the bigger intent of that project is, where you're sustaining not just in terms of materiality, using upcycled, but you're sustaining an entire generation, an entire village, by imparting them vocational skills. So even the kind of projects that we are working on, we are very sensitive to the intent of those projects, I think. And we've been lucky so far, where we've been able to educate clients. I think to be able to educate clients is important, because clients may not always be aware. It's not like they don't want to do, but they may not always be aware of, the things that we can bring into the project and make the project sustainable. And it's not about just using materials. It's about a bigger intent. Like for the temple, for instance, that water which was being pumped from the quarry it was groundwater percolation. But I think by rechannelizing it and making it a reservoir and then building a temple around it, went beyond just recycling that water. It helped in fostering an entire community of villages. So going beyond just a direct, tangible use of a material or a resource, or sustainability of crafts, for instance. You like the pictures that I showed you, where you have women making those mud rolls. And so it's not just using them for insulation, but also sustaining crafts, sustaining livelihoods, sustaining these communities which are at a disadvantage. So that, I think, also is an important part of a project when we work on it. And any opportunity that we can get to do that, we are very open to kind of exploring those possibilities.
That's lovely. That's lovely. Perfect, Aparna. It was very enlightening to have you here. Thank you very much. I guess people have no more questions, so I let you rest at least.
Yes.
And I would like to thank you once again for your generosity and your effort for being with us. I really hope we can meet in person
My pleasure.
as soon as possible.
Sure. Yes, I would love to visit anytime. I'm in your part of the world most of the time, so I would love to.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I wish you best, Pedro. I wish all the students the very best. And reach out anytime you think there is any interaction that you would want us to have with our studio. We would be happy.
Sure. Thank you very much. I guess it's just a first step for an approximation between you and us.
Yes.
And please
Thank you so
send
much.
us our best regards to Sameep.
I will.
Okay? And
I will.
everything
I
in
will. Yes. Thank you. You have a great evening, everybody.
Same to you.
Bye.
Have a good rest.
Yeah.
Thanks a
You
lot.
too. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.